Hello, 13 jurors. I know that I haven't done many videos lately. It's been a minute, but I wanted to do a video instead of just a podcast on this one because this is a special circumstance. On Monday, September 9th, the long awaited trial of Laurie Shaver in Claremont, Florida begins. Now, Laurie is facing trial for the murder of her husband, Michael or Mike Shaver. This trial is almost 9 years in the making. Authorities believe that Mike was killed in November of 2015. And here we are this many years later, and trial is finally set to start in less than a week. So I will be in Claremont every day for trial, and it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of craziness with this one, and I'm anxious to see the jury's reactions when they hear some of what's coming. Mike's family and friends and loved ones have waited a long time for this, but there are some curveballs that the defense has already thrown, and there are a lot of twists and turns on this one. I first heard about this case when one of my longtime best friends since college told me about it. Her kids went to school with Laurie and Mike's kids, and she and her husband became friendly with Laurie and her new husband. And look, we're from the country, y'all. We like to do all the country things, and Laurie does too. So they became friends, and they let the kids kind of hang out while they rode four-wheelers and shot guns and drank beer around the new fire pit. She told me about Laurie's previous husband that was either missing or had left, but she said that the details were always kind of weird and flaky. And then it turns out he was found buried under the fire pit in the backyard, the same fire pit that my friend had sat around with them. But there seemed to be some kind of holdup. And then finally, 2.5 years later, there was finally an arrest. She calls me one day and said, "You are never going to believe what happened." So it got my attention. This case got me digging, and I am going to do some future episodes on it in the podcast. But I wanted to go ahead and do a video to introduce y'all to everything because this has been a long time coming, and I want to give you all of the information that you have, what we know about everything going in to the trial of the state of Florida versus Laurie Shaver. On February 16th, 2018, Scott Amatuccio, who had been friends with Mike Shaver since 8th grade, contacted the sheriff's department to tell them that he was worried about his longtime close friend, Mike Shaver. Scott said that he hadn't seen Mike in more than 2 years, and neither had his family, and he wanted someone to go out to the property to check on him. Now look, I know what you're thinking. How do you go more than 2 years before you report someone missing? But Mike's family lived out of state, and they hadn't seen Mike or talked to him on the phone, but they had received a few messages and texts saying that he needed to get away and he wanted to be left alone, and told people don't bother him. And his Facebook page would occasionally show sporadic updates. Now, after a while, when he still hadn't come back around or contacted them, Mike's friends and family knew that something was up. His family was apparently having issues getting the police to consider Mike missing, but when Scott Amatuccio called, he kind of went a different route. He asked them to go do a wellness check. He said that Mike had 2 kids that he adored, and it was not in his character to just get up and leave and never come back. He told authorities that the totality of the circumstances surrounding Mike's disappearance was suspicious, and he felt like Mike's wife, Laurie Shaver, was not being truthful about his whereabouts. Laurie had given some kind of vague story about what happened, saying that Michael had left in a black SUV, but Scott knew that all of Mike's possessions were still at his house afterward. Scott said that there were text messages to Michael's boss saying that he, quote unquote, quit his job, and texts saying that his tools should just be given away. And Scott knew that that's not like him. There were posts on Mike's Facebook, but he believed that it was Laurie pretending to be Mike. Also, there was a concrete slab and fire pit that suddenly appeared on the property after Mike went missing. And Laurie got remarried pretty quickly, which he also found suspicious. So Scott reached out to the family, and they agreed. They knew that Mike would never just leave his kids to start a new family like Laurie had claimed he had. So they decided that Scott should call the authorities and report him, and that's exactly what he did. The sheriff's department showed up at the Shaver property and spoke to Laurie. She told them that Mike had left the family and was in Georgia. She said that the last time that she was at the house was more than a year before that, in September of 2014. The couple had been in an argument that got out of hand, and each accused the other of pulling out a gun that they had to wrestle away. The fight ended with Mike being charged with battery, and LAURIE said that after his arrest, he came to get some belongings and left. She said that the last time that she actually saw Mike was at a custody trial in 2015. LAURIE was cooperative. She let the deputies come in and search the property, no problem. That is, until they asked about the concrete slab over the fire pit. They asked if they could bring a cadaver dog to conduct a sniff of the slab, at which point LAURIE promptly told them to leave the property. So where was Mike Shaver? Deputies started investigating and found that he had no current cell phone. His Florida driver's license, U.S. passport, and pilot's medical certificates had all expired. He also didn't have a driver's license in any other state, plus his car had been repossessed in February of 2016. And court paperwork for a civil lawsuit for non-payment of a credit card had gone unserved on him because he was unable to be located. Everyone that authorities contacted looking for Mike said that they hadn't seen him since the end of 2015. He was entered into the NCIC as a missing person, and the investigation into his disappearance began. On March 9th, 2018, just 3 weeks after the wellness check, deputies returned to the Shaver property with a search warrant for cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. The skeletal remains of Mike Shaver were unearthed, and they were only 3 feet below the concrete slab on the fire pit. It would be another 2.5 years before LAURIE Shaver was arrested, and as police were cuffing her, she told them they have it all wrong. She said that she did not kill Mike Shaver, and she still sticks to that to this day. Going into the trial, LAURIE still maintains her innocence, and her attorney says that there isn't any direct evidence against her. So then how did we get here? And do they have the wrong person? Let's take a look at the history between LAURIE and Mike Shaver, what led to his death, what's happened since, and what evidence there is that LAURIE could be responsible. Mike and LAURIE started dating when they were only 13 years old. Childhood sweethearts from New York State would grow up to get married, have kids, and live their fairy tale. Unfortunately, it's never that simple, is it? Mike and LAURIE moved around a little bit, eventually settling in Central Florida, purchasing a home on 5 acres in Clermont, Florida, a little over 20 miles west of Orlando. It's hard to pinpoint the exact time that their marriage began to deteriorate, but LAURIE's infidelity seemed to play a major role in that. Mike said that the reason that they had left New York was because he caught LAURIE trying to have an affair with a man that they knew named Matt. A fresh start hundreds of miles away didn't help LAURIE's wandering eye, though. For a lady who worked from home, she had no problem finding men to partake in her extramarital activities, causing problems in her own marriage as well as multiple others. There was also domestic violence in the home. Now, this is a sensitive subject for a lot of us who have been through domestic violence, but women like LAURIE Shaver are the reason that so many of us have struggled to come forward. LAURIE's allegations about Mike's abuse have little to no credibility for multiple reasons. First off, some people have heard LAURIE herself admit that she is the aggressor. Second, multiple witnesses have seen LAURIE be the aggressor. And third, she continued to accuse Mike of harassment, stalking, and abusive behavior, giving detailed, fabricated stories to friends and family even after Mike was dead. According to a report from the U.S. National Institutes of Health, people who make these fake allegations are primarily motivated by emotional gain, and most false allegations are used to cover up other behavior. Makes sense with this one. For most of 2014, it's hard to tell when Mike and LAURIE were together and when they considered themselves separated. There seemed to be some back and forth, and things weren't going great. There was a time when it all got to be too much for Mike. In messages that Mike sent to LAURIE's sister Alicia, he tells her about having to move to Florida because of LAURIE trying to have an affair in New York. He says that he also just found out that LAURIE had what he described as a full-blown affair with her boss. He also mentions that LAURIE is now with the guy that sold them their truck, who Mike knows also happens to be married. Mike spoke to the man's wife, who informed him of some violent felonies from his past. Now, this infuriates Mike, and he tells Alicia that he's hiring a private investigator, and if the background check on the man comes back to show that this is true, he said he's going to remove the kids from LAURIE's custody. Alicia's response in this conversation is basically to gaslight Mike. She tells him that he needs to think about the kids, not himself, and tells him that he needs to step up and be a good dad, which she says means not taking the kids from LAURIE. But she says that he wouldn't be successful in doing that anyway. Mike responds, telling Alicia that's not what he's trying to do. He relays the information that he got from the wife of LAURIE's newest fling about him being abusive and having multiple violent felonies and a bad temper. He also tells her, look, if the background check comes back clean, then it turns out not to be true, then he said he'll be okay with that. But Mike tells Alicia that if the kids are in danger, they will be removed, and tells her that the kids are the only thing that he cares about. Alicia responds by saying, "Give me a break." She said that affairs don't put kids in danger, and if he tries to remove them, it's only to get back at LAURIE. Alicia said that her sister would never put the kids in danger. But how true is that based on her behavior? July was a mess for the Shavers. On July 19th, LAURIE called the police after a night-long argument. She said that it got so heated that Mike had punched the dresser, and then she says that he turned and came towards her when his friend, who was there, stepped in between them. That's when she called 911. Mike left the house and police made contact with him out on Highway 33 that evening. The following night, LAURIE called the police on Mike again. She said that Mike was in the home trying to remove the TVs. He tore apart the bed and started yelling at her, and she said that he was verbally abusing her. She said that she was trying to be civil and allow him to gather his things. She said that she asked him repeatedly to leave, and when he yelled at her, she told him that if he didn't leave, she was going to call 911. She said that at that point, he came towards her, called her a bitch, told her that he hoped that she died, and made a comment that he should just be done with all of this, and just end it. LAURIE said that she called 911 and Mike left. And when the police arrived, she said that there were dead roses on her front doorstep. LAURIE had an anonymous friend and her sister write a letter in support of a restraining order against Mike. The friend's letter was all based on information that LAURIE had relayed. Things that Mike was too attached to LAURIE and that she had tried to leave him, but he threatened self-harm, so she had to take him back. The friend also suggested in the letter that Mike could benefit from therapy. She didn't say anything about LAURIE's therapy, though. Alicia's letter in support of her sister also mentioned Mike's attachment to LAURIE. She said that his need to be connected to her has progressed over the years, and she says that he doesn't even trust LAURIE to do things with her sister alone. This jealousy, she says, is unfounded because she says the reality of LAURIE being able to seek a relationship outside of her marriage would be impossible. I guess she meant aside from all of those other relationships outside of her marriage that she had. After reading this, I can't imagine why Mike didn't trust LAURIE alone with her sister. LAURIE also wrote her own note to the court with a list of reasons why she wanted a restraining order. She mentioned that one night they were separated when Mike came there around 2 a.m. to spend the night. She said that she let him stay, but changed the alarm code the next day. She also mentioned Mike ruining her reputation by sending messages telling people about her infidelity. LAURIE claimed that there was a long history of mental and obsessive behavior, and that when she tries to leave, he threatens to ruin her life and wears her down so that she has to go back. The documents are different than most of the ones that I've seen when someone's requesting a restraining order. Some of it actually comes across as bitterness about things during an argument as opposed to legitimate concerns for safety. Like she talks about how Mike tried to ruin things with her new boyfriend by talking to his ex and saying that Mike was going to leave a bad review on the website about the car salesman sleeping with his wife, hoping to get him fired. She says that Mike told her that he doesn't hate anyone as much as he hates her, and that if he could shoot anyone, it would be her. She also says that Mike told her that if he catches her with another man in the home, he will kill him. And she says that he removed her gun from the house that was bought for her, leaving her with no self-defense. That, along with the 2 calls that she had made to police within that week, were all listed as reasons that she wanted a restraining order against Mike. She also asked for temporary child support for the kids, along with ordering Mike to get treatment or counseling. Now, all of this was apparently for nothing, because a few days later, LAURIE filed to dismiss the injunction, and that was it. The allegations may have been coming from LAURIE, but according to Mike's co-workers, the abuse was coming from her as well. Mike's friend and co-worker Corey remembered Mike came to work sometime around this time period with several bruises on his face and chest and arms. She said that LAURIE had gotten irate and blew up about something and began punching him with closed fists. Said that he didn't fight back to defend himself because it wasn't worth it. Corey remembers another time that Mike said that LAURIE had gotten mad and threw something at him, missed, and the item went through the kitchen window. In early August, LAURIE crashes her truck into a tree, totaling it with both kids in the car. She wasn't charged with a DUI, although those that knew her say that she had been drinking when the accident happened, and that both kids sustained injuries, and LAURIE did as well. LAURIE pled guilty to careless driving, and her new boyfriend was able to sell her another truck. Police were back at the Shaver home on September 4th after LAURIE called 911 about another fight with Mike. The officer said that he was able to determine through his investigation that a verbal argument escalated when LAURIE threw a vase into the sliding glass door, which resulted in Mike then grabbing her by the arms and pushing her into the wall. From there, the argument led to the bedroom where firearms were removed from the nightstands, and each of them said that the others pulled theirs first. LAURIE says that Mike grabbed his gun, and then they struggled with it, causing Mike to be struck in the head with the firearm. But Mike says that LAURIE grabbed her gun, saying that she was going to end it all now. When he wrestled it away from her, he said that she then grabbed his gun, which he also was able to get away from her. LAURIE ran into the living room, and Mike unloaded both of the guns. He then followed her into the living room and cornered her, but she ran around him, grabbing the guns that Mike had just unloaded. She hit him in the head with one gun and then threw the other at him, missing and hitting the entertainment center. Their scuffle left some marks. The entertainment center was damaged, and LAURIE had multiple lacerations on her hands and arms, and visible bruising apparently on her biceps and on the right side of her back. And Mike had a laceration on his head from the gun. LAURIE took off with the kids and called the police. They told her to pull over, so she pulled into a Target parking lot where they were able to make contact with her. When they arrived at the house, Mike was sitting on the back porch. He told officers that it turned violent so fast. He didn't deny grabbing LAURIE by the arms. He said that he probably did it to calm her down. The officer said in his report that he couldn't determine who committed the actual assault. Mike's sister said that if both Mike and LAURIE were arrested, the kids would have been placed with CPS, and she said that Mike didn't want that, so he told the police to just take him. He was arrested and charged with domestic battery and transported to Lake County Jail without incident. Police took both handguns, and it would be about 9 months before LAURIE's gun would be returned, but they released Mike's back that same night. The following day, Mike was released from jail, and his friend, Robert Mercado, drove him to the house to gather some of his belongings. Robert said in a statement that LAURIE became enraged and threw the handgun at him. She files another injunction against him the following week, but drops it 11 days later. Mike signed up for a year-long intervention program for the charge, and he completed it in half the time. Not surprisingly, LAURIE's new fling didn't last. 2 truck sales and 2 fractured marriages later, the man broke things off with LAURIE and began to repair things with his wife. LAURIE didn't take the news well, and Mike was there to try to calm her down. She was threatening to kill herself, so she was so uncontrollable, Mike even tried to call the guy, asking him to come over for help. The man heard LAURIE screaming in the background, and he didn't want anything to do with that. The man's wife didn't either, because on September 19th, she actually filed papers requesting a restraining order against LAURIE, citing repeated violence. Things with Laurie had never been worse, and Mike ended up moving out of the house that he had purchased earlier that year and moved into an airplane hangar. Laurie was dating someone, which comes as a surprise to 0% of the population. But life was moving on. Mike had a job at an airplane hangar working on the P-52 Mustang, a plane that he took a lot of pride in and a job that he truly enjoyed. He was still working full-time at Disney as a monorail technician. It was here at Disney where he met a woman named Kendall Davidowski. Mike and Kendall started dating in November of 2014. And while Laurie saw no problems with her dating other people, both now and while her and Mike were still together, she wasn't going to allow Mike to have a girlfriend. As soon as she caught wind of Mike being happy, she knew that she had to put an end to that quick. Kendall said that Laurie began to use Mike's children as a pawn to get what she wanted. She witnessed phone arguments between Mike and Laurie where Laurie would tell him that he would never see his kids again. On nights that Mike was planning to stay at Kendall's house after work, he would always drive to the hangar first, just to make sure that Laurie wasn't following him. Laurie's intimidation wasn't just toward Mike, though. During their brief relationship, Laurie constantly sent Facebook messages to Kendall, harassing her to leave Mike and threatening to expose Kendall to her family as a homewrecker. Ironic, right? Laurie would hurl personal insults at Kendall, even going so far as to mention her grandmother's name specifically, and calling Kendall's mom out of state at 3 a.m. one time, asking for Kendall. Sometime around February or March of 2015, Mike called Kendall while they were on the way to work and told her to park somewhere other than her normal lot because Laurie was on the way to Disney with a gun. Laurie created multiple fake Facebook profiles and sent friend requests to Kendall. And in April of 2015, she contacted Disney's HR department and filed a complaint against Kendall using pictures from her Facebook. Kendall said that there were never any issues between her and Mike, other than the ones that Laurie caused. But Laurie's incessant harassment became too much for Kendall. She became fearful, and she was scared to lose her job if Laurie called HR again, trying to get her fired. So in May of 2015, Laurie got her way. Kendall broke things off with Mike. 6 months later, he would be dead. The back and forth of their relationship continued. Mike was seen by neighbors outside on their property shooting guns that May. Within a month or so, he was contacting authorities because Laurie had taken the kids to New York to see her family, and he didn't want the kids to leave the state with her. Then, by August, they filed for an LLC together, Sunny State Farm, LLC, with Laurie listed as the registered agent and Mike listed as other. 1 month after registering their LLC, Laurie is at the park where she meets a man named Jeremy Townsend, but he goes by Jay. Jay was at the park sitting on the park benches while his son played on the playground. Laurie came over and spoke to him, commenting about him being there alone. The following day, they see each other again. Just like that, Laurie's next affair begins. Jay Townsend was a married man, but marriage was never something that deterred Laurie from pursuing her next fling. Not her own marriage, and certainly not somebody else's. It was early fall, and while she became infatuated with a new man, Mike was working, spending time with his kids, and making time to do fun things with his friends, like hanging out and riding four-wheelers. November 7th of 2015, Florida Flywheelers Tractor Show is happening in Fort Meade. Fort Meade is about an hour and a half from Claremont, but it's worth the drive to make a family day out of it. The tractor show is a huge 4-day event. The gates open at 8 a.m. Families come from all over to see antique tractors and cars. There's a swap meet with dealers and vendors, and a tractor parade, which seems to be a favorite with the kids. Mike had plans to meet his friend and co-worker Frank Merritt at the show. Mike was going to bring Laurie and the kids, and Frank was bringing his wife. The event lasts until 4, with the tractor parade as the day's finale. But Frank said that Laurie and Mike didn't seem to be getting along, so they left the event early. That was the last time that anyone, other than Laurie Shaver, ever heard Mike Shaver's voice or saw Mike Shaver alive. Frank decided to text Mike the next day to check on him, but he got no response. He tried again the following day, and this time received a response that said that he was quitting work to save his marriage. He also told him to keep his tools, he wouldn't be picking them up. The next day, Tuesday, November 10th, Mike was scheduled to work, but didn't call and didn't show up. Mike's boss, John Borglum, said that Mike was a reliable employee. He was in line to become foreman, and he never missed work without calling in. John texted Michael 2 days later and received the following response. Quote, "I'm having issues at home. In Georgia right now. Just fire me or I'll quit. I will not be returning anytime soon." End quote. LAURIE messaged her sister Alicia on Wednesday, saying that Mike had left yesterday, packed his stuff, and went to the airport. She told her supervisor a different story a couple weeks later, saying that she had been getting child support from Mike, but he was now in jail for non-payment after losing his job, although LAURIE had never actually attempted to file for child support. By Friday the 13th, Mike's friends were starting to get worried, so Frank went by the house to check on him. LAURIE told him that Mike had left and gone to Georgia after they got into a fight about another woman's number being in his phone. Frank saw that Mike's car was still at the house, though, so he asked LAURIE how Mike could have gotten somewhere. LAURIE said that Robert Mercado had picked him up and driven him to Georgia. But Robert was interviewed, and he said that never happened. On Monday, LAURIE messages her sister, talking about the weekend. She said that she did tons of yard work and cleaned up outside. 2 weeks pass, and nobody has seen Mike. He had plans with his friend, Robert Mercado, over the Thanksgiving break, but when Robert messaged Mike, he received a response to leave him alone and not bother him. Going forward, friends and family will try again, but it's usually either ignored or it'll be a response just like this one. There was one to his sister in January saying to leave him alone like they have his whole life. There was one to his niece in September saying that he doesn't have a family anymore. He doesn't know who she is and stop messaging him. It was later noted in court documents that LAURIE wouldn't have recognized his niece's maiden name, but Mike obviously would. About 3.5 weeks after Mike goes missing, LAURIE begins trying to sell off all of his belongings, his firearms, tools that he used to make his living, his car, home, and property, and pretty much anything else that she could sell. Joseph Bray, the owner of JB Guns in Bushnell, Florida, overheard LAURIE selling one gun to the owner of an audio store nearby. He talks to LAURIE about what she has and makes plans to go out to her property to buy some of the remaining firearms. Joe goes to LAURIE's home to meet her and purchases 9 firearms total from LAURIE, including 2 .28 caliber revolvers. Also reload equipment, firearm cleaning supplies, all of this for just $1,000. Joe said that LAURIE was home alone when he was there and told him that the guns had belonged to her husband, but that her husband had left and she hadn't seen him or heard from him, didn't know where he was. She said that she considered all of the firearms hers now and she wanted to sell them. She told him that Mike was an aircraft mechanic and she had sold his aircraft mechanic tools the previous day for $1,000. She offered to sell him Mike's car, which was in the yard, without a title, and his tractor. She also said that the house and the property were for sale for $150,000. Joe thought it was unusual that a man would leave behind all of his possessions, including several firearms and expensive work tools. He later saw LAURIE on TV in March of 2018 and recognized her and the property. LAURIE did end up trying to sell the house and she found a buyer, but she didn't realize that she couldn't sell it without Mike's signature. So she stayed there. She never was able to sell Mike's car either, and it was repossessed from the property in February of 2016 for non-payment. While LAURIE's busy selling off her husband's belongings, the relationship with her boyfriend is still progressing. Jay's wife works at the school, so while she was working during the day, Jay would make trips to LAURIE's for an afternoon visit. He said that the first time that he went to LAURIE's was sometime in December. LAURIE had been wearing her favorite jeans, and he noticed a stain on the thigh. He asked if the stain was blood. He said that LAURIE changed the jeans and never wore them again. The relationship between Jay and LAURIE continued, with him making these hour-long visits to see her at her house about 2 or 3 times a week. To Jay, it was just physical. He was married. He was not planning on changing that. But to LAURIE, she apparently thought it was more. She even got a heart with his name tattooed in her most private of areas. LAURIE wanted Jay to leave his wife, and toward the end of February 2016, it became a big argument between them. There was a text argument that actually went on for about 3 days where LAURIE confronts Jay, angry that he's wearing his wedding ring, that he's not getting divorced, accusing him of lying to her about his whereabouts, and asking, "Are you in love with her?" referring to his wife. It was during this 3-day argument that Jay's wife, Vanessa, began receiving Facebook messages from the Facebook account of Mike Shaver. But she didn't see them. They went into a different folder, and she wasn't notified that they had been sent. By April, LAURIE was tired of waiting. Jay wasn't leaving his wife, and his wife wasn't checking her Facebook messages from Mike Shaver's account. So LAURIE decided to take it into her own hands. She ordered flowers from a website called FromYouFlowers.com, and she scheduled them to be delivered to Jay's wife, Vanessa, at the school where she works. The flowers were paid out of LAURIE's checking account, but the delivery said it was from Mike. At 3:18 a.m. on February 11th, Vanessa receives another Facebook message from Mike Shaver's Facebook account, telling her that her special delivery will be arriving today. Hope to finally hear back from her, and a flower arrangement emoji. Later that day, flowers are delivered to Vanessa. It was her and Jay's wedding anniversary, but instead of opening the envelope to a loving anniversary message from her husband, she opens it up to a note that reads, "Roses are red, violets are blue. My wife is a whore, and your husband is too. Sorry about this. Check your Facebook messages. We need to talk. Mike." Vanessa opens the messages from Mike Shaver's Facebook account. She is sent texts and explicit photos that were shared between Jay and LAURIE, which she's told came from a spy app that Mike placed on LAURIE's phone. She's given a phone number, which she tries to call. There's no answer, but the number texts her back right away, claiming to be Mike. The phone number that Vanessa was texting is not the phone number that Mike Shaver used. The phone number was actually registered to LAURIE and was only active for a week or so, and then the number was changed again. That number that it was changed to was used by LAURIE after that until sometime in 2018. It's obvious that the purpose of this was to let Vanessa know about the affair with Jay so that she would leave him and then LAURIE could have him all to herself. It didn't quite work out the way that LAURIE wanted it to, though. At one point, when Vanessa said that she may be staying with Jay, the account from Mike Shaver said that he thought that LAURIE was pregnant with Jay's child. The account also sent her the name of a good divorce attorney. Vanessa confronted Jay, and he did eventually admit to the affair after he was shown everything that Vanessa had been sent. He eventually broke things off with LAURIE and repaired his relationship to his wife, which, according to LAURIE's friend Rebecca, made LAURIE mad. So spring of 2016 wasn't quite going how LAURIE had wanted, but she had other things to keep her busy, like trying to build a new fire pit in her backyard. A month earlier, LAURIE had posted a photo of what she called her newest project, saying that she built this fire pit today, and now she just needs to pour concrete. Almost exactly 1 month later, on April 28th, she posts another picture, this time with bags of concrete stacked in the back of a pickup truck, with the caption, "Cement. It's going in the area around the fire pit I built." And there were other things to keep her busy as well. LAURIE had begun working out at Gold's Gym in Claremont. It was here that she became friends with Rebecca Urbanowski, who worked as a trainer at the gym. With her husband gone and her boyfriend married, LAURIE had Rebecca come stay with her for a while. Rebecca's boyfriend, Austin, also worked at the gym, and he would come over and hang out with Rebecca at LAURIE's house. Sometimes he would bring his twin brother, Travis. Travis Filmer met LAURIE Shaver while she was still involved with Jay, but when Jay decided that he was going to work things out in his marriage, it gave Travis an opening to begin dating LAURIE. Travis had a troubled past. He had a felony charge from 2007 and 2008 that led to spending time behind bars. But by the time he met LAURIE, those close to him say that he was a changed man, working at Real Life Church in Claremont and going to school to be a minister. LAURIE and Travis began dating in the spring of 2016, though the exact time is unclear. But by summer, They already had a joint checking account and a honey-do list. Whatever effort was previously made by Laurie to put concrete over the fire pit, it wasn't good enough. In September, Travis rents a cement mixer from Home Depot, and they buy 42 bags of concrete mix. The area in the backyard that Mike had dug out for what was supposed to be a duck pond was now his grave and covered in concrete. Travis and Laurie marked the new concrete with their initials and began making plans for their future. On New Year's Eve, after less than a year of dating, Laurie and Travis got married in a backyard ceremony at the house. Now, legally, Laurie was still married, but she told Travis that she was divorced, and even told Rebecca that Mike was at the courthouse for their divorce hearing, but they kept him in a separate room. They had a small ceremony, just immediate family was present. Court documents say that sometime after the ceremony, an argument began between Travis and Laurie, which caused her to say that she was getting her gun, and she went storming into the house, barricading herself in her bedroom. I was able to talk to one of the family members present who said that Laurie disappeared for a long time. No one could find her, and Travis's mom even got in the car driving down the road to see if she could find her. Eventually, Travis's mom left, and Travis, his brother Austin, and Rebecca ended up finding Laurie in a small room inside of the closet. She had barricaded herself in, gun in hand, and had to be talked down. Looking back, Travis's family wonders if Laurie's conscience got the best of her. She had just had a wedding ceremony, and there was a fire burning in the fire pit, right on top of the husband that she was still married to. Travis told his family that up to that point, that was the worst night of his life. In 2017, it was a fresh start for Laurie and Travis. They found out that they were expecting their first child together and began making preparations for their growing family. In October, Laurie sold her pink .38 caliber gun to one of the neighbors, and in November, Mike Shaver's Facebook showed the first update in a while. His cover photo was changed to a photo of guns. His profile picture was changed a couple months later, on January 2nd, to a group drinking at a bar. Not sure what the significance of the photo is, but a reverse Google image search shows that it was posted the previous day on an Instagram account for a Bloody Mary mix company called Sportsman's Redneck Juice. Laurie gave birth to her first baby with Travis on January 18th of 2018. Less than a month later, Lake County Sheriff's deputies showed up at the house on Sandy Pines Road to do a wellness check on Mike Shaver at the request of a call from his friend, Scott Amatuccio. Laurie was cooperative with police and invited them in the house while she explained that she hadn't seen Mike since 2015, and he hadn't been at the house since 2014. The conversation was abruptly ended, and deputies were asked to leave the property as soon as they made their way out back. One of the deputies noticed that when he walked up to the concrete slab, there was about a 3-foot by 6-foot depression in the slab that was discolored. A second layer of concrete had been poured over that area, but it wasn't smooth, and one deputy said that you could make out the shape of a grave. Laurie had told them that this used to be a chicken coop, and then they were going to make it a duck pond, but it ended up being a fire pit. They asked Laurie if her husband was buried beneath that slab, and Laurie replied, "No, that's ridiculous." The deputies returned 3 weeks later with cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. News crews swarmed the area as backhoes were brought in and the dogs were led onto the property. They began to tear apart the concrete slab, and just after 5 p.m. that day, a human bone was found. The search continued the following day as they were able to retrieve additional human remains, as well as a tarp, ratchet straps, and a queen-size bedsheet purchased from Kohl's, a store that Laurie frequented based on her bank records. The remains arrive at the pathologist, but it would be 3 more months before they were able to be positively identified. During a second search warrant on the home, Blue Star, which yields a presumptive detection of bloodstains hidden from the naked eye, indicated a positive reaction in the track of the sliding glass door leading from the dining area to the porch. The substance ran in a drip-like pattern down the outside of the trailer, between the home and the porch. So this, along with apparent hairs that were found in the area, weren't able to give a sufficient amount of DNA for analysis. But swabs from the interior lower track of the sliding door demonstrated the presence of a mixture of DNA consistent with 3 donors, including LAURIE SHAVER and 2 unrelated individuals, at least one of which is a male contributor. Mike could not be included or excluded as a contributor. Neighbors, some who had long suspected LAURIE, were surprised to see LAURIE and Travis arrive back home the following day, seeming to have life back to normal. Most of the neighborhood expected LAURIE to be arrested once Mike was found buried in the yard. On March 12th, 3 days after the remains were found, but long before they were identified, a postcard with Mike's photograph was mailed from Orlando to LAURIE with a handwritten message. "Tell the kids I love them. See you soon. Mike." From November 7th, 2015, until Mike's remains were discovered, LAURIE continued to tell friends and family that she had seen and spoke to Mike and that he was stalking and harassing her. There were times that she accused him of things when he was already buried under a concrete slab. In June of 2018, the DNA confirmed the remains to be Mike. Cause and manner of death was homicide by gunshot wound to the back of the head, with a posterior to anterior trajectory, meaning back to front. A single .38 caliber class projectile was recovered from his skull. The time of death was difficult because there was no remaining soft tissue left, but they determined that it had to be several months to several years prior to discovery. No more payments were ever made on the property, and it went into foreclosure. LAURIE, ever the victim, blamed it on slander and interference of both law enforcement and the news media. She says if it weren't for everyone else, she could have made her payments. Travis signed a warranty deed for a house about 20 miles north of Claremont, and he and LAURIE moved out of the Sandy Pines Road property for good in August. They did, however, abandon their horse in Florida in the summer, leaving neighbors worried and trying to get help for weeks. Animal control was called, along with multiple horse rescues. The horse, a beautiful mare, had been attacked previously by a panther that had come through the neighborhood, so she had some bad scar marks on her hip. She was skinny and petrified of human contact, but was able to be taken in by a local rescue who worked with her and helped her improve each day while looking for her new home. It would take 2.5 years before they finally arrested LAURIE SHAVER for the murder of her husband. The PCA was signed on September 16th, 2020, and she was arrested the following night. She was able to bond out after spending less than 3 months in jail. Mike's family and friends, plus all the neighbors and people who have had their lives affected by LAURIE, have waited day after day, month after month, year after year, waiting for updates in this case. It took 2.5 years for Mike to be labeled as missing, another 2.5 years for LAURIE to be arrested, and it has taken another 4 years for it to finally make it to trial. LAURIE's relationship with Travis has also started to have issues. They had another child together after leaving Claremont, and LAURIE's friend Rebecca married her boyfriend, Travis's twin brother, Austin. But it wasn't one big happy family. Travis's friends and family say that LAURIE has isolated him, forced him to cut off communication with his family, even the person who has always been the closest to him, his twin brother. Rebecca, who was LAURIE's friend, has now become her sister-in-law, and while many friends would think that that's a great thing, Rebecca has seen who LAURIE really is, and having her as a part of the family has been difficult to say the least. Travis's family members have said that they've tried to show Travis this pattern that LAURIE has of manipulating men and isolating them so that they don't have anyone to tell them what she's doing is wrong, but now they're no longer able to communicate with him, and they feel like it's because LAURIE isn't allowing it. LAURIE's aggression and violent tendencies haven't seemed to go away either. Travis has said that LAURIE has punched him in the head on multiple occasions, and she's extremely verbally abusive, something that her previous neighbors have confirmed as well. They used to hear her screaming at Mike. Travis is no longer working at the church, no longer going to school, and no longer planning on being a minister. Things that his family said that he was excited about until Laurie entered his life. In July of 2022, Travis was arrested for domestic battery by strangulation and tampering with a victim or witness. Laurie told police that she woke up to Travis's hands around her neck, and she tried to defend herself by hitting his back and his shoulders. She yelled for her kids and told them to call 911, but Travis grabbed the phones and threw them on the floor. She yelled for her son to call 911 from his room, at which point she said that she had to step between Travis and her son so that he could call, and Travis began yelling and calling him a derogatory word. Travis then walked into their bedroom and punched a mirror, causing a cut in his hand that resulted in significant bleeding. Laurie and Mike's daughter told police that she woke up to her mom screaming her name, so she rushed to the living room and saw Travis with his hands around Laurie's neck. She confirmed that Travis threw their phones and yelled at her brother when he began to call. Travis tells a different version. He said that he came home from work and laid down, face down on the bed. Laurie was lying next to him and began to hit him across the back, at which point he rolled over and grabbed her neck. Officers noted that Laurie didn't have any injuries, but did say that she wanted to pursue charges against Travis. Travis told them that it was Laurie who hit him, and she had been the one hitting him in the past, prior to this incident. They checked and saw Travis's history with 2 prior convictions, and he was placed under arrest. They ended up having to take him to the hospital. Then he went to Lake County Jail. Travis's brother bailed him out the next day, and he went to his mom's house. He looked at his bank account that day and noticed that Laurie had completely drained it and gone on a shopping spree. Laurie made statements during the investigation leading to Travis's arrest, including the fact that Travis said if he spoke to law enforcement, Laurie would go to prison. The body cam caught this on camera. Travis was ordered to take anger management, given 3 years of probation in October of 2022, and applied for early termination after serving half, which was approved in May of this year. This isn't the first thing that Travis has apparently said that has referenced Laurie's potential guilt. The PCA says that investigators talked to Travis, and he said that Laurie told him that Mike wasn't missing. He's just no longer walking this earth. He said that she also told him that something bad happened and that there was a body on the property. According to Laurie's attorney, Travis now denies saying this. The investigator said that this wasn't recorded because Travis would not let them record him at the time, but that it was said in front of 4 officers. In September of 2022, the case took another huge turn when the defense filed a motion with the court requesting that an expert be appointed to evaluate Mike and Laurie's daughter, who they say wants to confess to her father's murder. They are saying that the daughter admitted to shooting her father in the back of the head while being deposed, and said that she did it to stop him from beating her mother. The child, who was 7 years old at the time, and the defense wants an expert to evaluate her and then testify as to whether or not she was being truthful. They're asking that the report from this requested expert be kept confidential and only for the defense to see. The court denied the motion, saying that the defense failed to show any strong and compelling evidence establishing a need for evaluation, and in fact said that the defense is actually seeking an evaluation to be used as a potential bolstering of the child's potential testimony. The court also stated that having an expert evaluate the child and then testify as to her truthfulness is not appropriate under the law, and asking that the report be kept confidential and only for the defense also isn't appropriate since the defense is not the child's attorney. There's an attorney ad litem for that. The defense attorney has no attorney-client relationship and therefore no rights to a confidential report. The defense fires back, saying that this isn't a compelled exam, and not allowing it would mean that the state is obstructing justice. It was denied, and another motion to reconsider was filed on May 8th, and that one was also denied 10 days later. There are multiple problems with Mike and Laurie's daughter's alleged confession, aside from the legal ones mentioned here. First, the story is unclear and possibly changed over time. There are some different versions floating around, and one that includes the child getting the gun and somehow shooting her father in the head, and Laurie covering it up, and then the most recent one that the man that Laurie was having an affair with at the time, Jay, showed up after the child shot Mike, and then he shot him again, and then told them to leave while he took care of things, supposedly burying Mike on the property without Laurie knowing. Then Laurie just deciding to pour concrete in that exact area, of all spots on the entire 5-acre property, right over where Mike was buried. In a pretrial hearing on August 22nd, the child's confession is brought up again when the state asked the court to exclude Travis's boss, Adam Narvaez, from testifying that the child told him this as well. The girl approached Travis's boss, who is also involved in the church that they attend. Apparently, this was at a function at his house, and he had a conversation with her while standing in his hallway, saying that she had shot her dad in the back of the head and that he was abusive to Laurie, and that Laurie's newest affair at the time, Jay Townsend, came in, shot him again, and then took care of the body. The judge ordered that this will not be allowed in at trial. I don't know how likely it is that Jay would involve himself in something like this for someone that he was only interested in really just sleeping with. He had only been seeing Laurie for a couple months and would probably have been home with his wife on the weekend like normal, not at his mistress's house with her husband and kids. Now, these are, of course, just behaviors. That's not evidence. But Jay and his wife were also very cooperative with police, handing over more than 600 pages of messages, plus the card and envelope from the flower delivery and basically anything else requested. Another 5 months of messaging, and nothing was ever even hinted to that could imply that he knew about this or had some kind of involvement in anything. But more importantly, the pathologist has said that there was no evidence of 2 gunshot wounds. There's only one. And also, there's no evidence of a sharp angle of entry. The little girl who just turned 7 would be firing from a much lower angle than an adult woman. If the bullet is fired from a sharper angle, for example, from closer to the ground where a child would be firing it, it's more likely the bullet entrance will be oval and there would be excessive chipping of part of the skull. And there's none of that. And finally, on the day that Laurie was arrested, the kids and Travis were with Travis's mom. The child told Travis's mom that she didn't remember Mike. She had just turned 7 when Mike was killed, and she was 12 when Laurie was arrested. If she said that she didn't remember Mike, and 1 year later she's allegedly confessing to shooting him, then it seems that those memories or that story must have somehow been planted over the course of that year. And if that's true, then Laurie's diabolical manipulation tactics are even more disturbing. The defense also has another phase of their strategy, trying to paint Mike as a violent, abusive man. They filed a motion to include prior bad acts of Mike, who they referred to as a quote-unquote alleged victim. Really? They include the accusations that Laurie had previously made in her request for previous injunctions, the same injunctions that she changed her mind on and voluntarily dismissed when she calmed down. But the defense says that Laurie just let one of those injunctions dissolve because she wanted to avoid ongoing pressure of Mike. And the other one she just dismissed because of emotional pressure that Mike had placed on her. Then the accusations get wild. She now claims that between 2009 and 2015, Laurie says she was repeatedly and forcibly raped and drugged either by Mike or with the consent of Mike. Such events would occur frequently with force upon Laurie, and often having drugged Laurie prior to the commission of such crimes. They allege that Mike would direct that Laurie allow others to touch her in an inappropriate manner and against her will. This supposedly happened in Florida and in Reno, and despite repeated pleas to stop such events, the defendant found herself berated and physically forced to comply with such demands. She also says that he would lock her in the closet against her will as a consequence of not following each and every request made. Then she says that Mike boarded up the house in 2014 and held the family against their will, threatening to burn the house down with the family trapped inside. They say that he struck her in the head with a cast iron skillet and even controlled what and how much she could eat, striking her against her will should she violate her demands. The court ruled that all of these allegations are hearsay and based on statements of Laurie's that are self-serving, so they can't be offered as evidence to prove truth of the matter. And they can't introduce her statements as evidence of the victim's character. So anything that's brought in must be done through admissible testimony and evidence. Laurie's lawyers are allowed to introduce her petition for a restraining order during trial, but if they do so, it must also include the petition that Laurie filed days later to terminate that order. Here's why I don't believe anything she says. Laurie has continually shown to be the aggressor in the relationships, and she has even admitted to people that she's the aggressor. Even in her current relationship with Travis, he and others close to them have said that Laurie is abusive and controlling, notorious for punching men in the head. Mike's coworkers and friends have witnessed Laurie's aggression and outbursts and have seen the bruising and injuries from Laurie on Mike. Multiple witnesses told investigators that Mike would often take the blame so that the kids wouldn't be without their mother. And we know for a fact that Laurie continued to lie about Mike's abuse and harassment long after he was already dead and buried in the backyard. She has no credibility. There's nothing that she can say that any of us can believe, and women like her are the reason that so many women who are actual victims of domestic violence have trouble being believed when they finally get the courage to come forward. Laurie used 911 and the law as a way to punish and keep control over Mike, not as a way to help protect herself and her children from him. Mike is the one who needed protection, but unfortunately, it's too late. However, it's not too late to protect his honor and good name. Mike was a good man, and those who knew him describe him as funny, loyal, honest, and hardworking. He cared about his kids and his family and loved making people laugh. He didn't deserve what happened to him, and Laurie didn't deserve him. The defense is expected to bring in an expert to show that there's no digital data provided by the state that links Laurie to being the one who drafted any of the messages or Facebook updates. And look, that's true. She didn't have to use her fingerprint or fancy eyeball scanner to identify herself before updating Mike's profile or before sending people messages pretending to be him or before using his credit card after his disappearance. But there's more than enough evidence to draw a conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt. The last time that Laurie ever called Mike's cell phone was November 3rd. Prior to this, she called his phone multiple times every week. After November 9th, Mike's debit card was never used again for any in-store or in-person purchases. On November 19th, and again on November 23rd, online purchases from Wish were made using Mike's card. The receipts confirm that the orders consisted of female lingerie and clothing items, and both of those orders were shipped to a recipient named LAURIE SHAVER at 9850 Sandy Pines Road in Claremont, with a confirmation email address listed. On November 30th, a check for $2,539 was mailed from Mariner Finance in Leesburg, Florida to Michael Shaver at his home address. On December 11th, the back of that check was endorsed with an unreadable signature, Mike's social security number and cell phone number, and accepting the terms of the loan. On December 14th, the check was deposited into Mike's Chase checking account through an ATM in Claremont. Mariner Finance attempted to contact Mike to collect on this loan, but they were never able to contact him during the next 3 years. Also, when they talked to them, they said that they had never actually spoke to or saw Mike Shaver during the loan process. So the person who secured the loan in his name, deposited it, and then spent it and made cash withdrawals would have to have had access to his secure community mailbox, his social security number, his ATM card for 2 weeks, his PIN number, and know that he wouldn't be around to notice the fraudulent deposit, multiple withdrawals, or packages being shipped to the residence. Between December 14th and December 30th, multiple ATM withdrawals were made along with purchases online and one payment to Sumter Electric Power Company, which is the power company used at the Shaver home. On December 15th, an online purchase was made at Walmart.com for $424.54 using Mike's card. The purchase was for children's items, and it was shipped to a recipient named LAURIE SHAVER at the Sandy Pines Road address. The total of purchases and withdrawals were more than $2,000, causing Mike's account to be overdrawn by the end of the year. After a few more purchases and fees, the checking account remained overdrawn and was never used again. Before November 9th, his account was almost exclusively debit purchases in person at stores. Afterwards, it was purchases that were online and ATM cash withdrawals, all in Claremont, or shipped to the Shaver residence, not Georgia, where she said that he went. Also, Laurie's friend, Katina Vasquez, said that she saw what she believed was Mike's cell phone at Laurie's house not long after his disappearance, along with his clothing and personal belongings. The messages that were sent from Mike's Facebook to Jay's wife, Vanessa, told her that she would be getting a delivery and put the flower emoji. That delivery of the flowers was paid for with Laurie's bank account. The Facebook updates that were made to Mike's account were often utilizing the same IP address as Laurie's Facebook page updates. Investigators reviewed and compared the IP addresses listed on the activity logs, and they show 13 IP addresses that are identical on both accounts, indicating that the devices used for Facebook activity on both accounts were on the same network. So let the expert give his testimony, and then let the jury use their common sense. The defense also wanted to exclude the mention of any firearms, claiming that since the projectile was too damaged from being in the ground for too long, they weren't able to forensically match it with any specific .38 caliber handgun. So the defense said that they shouldn't mention Laurie having access to firearms. That was denied, obviously. Laurie kept a .38 on her nightstand. Mike also had a .38. Frank Merritt had given Mike his .38, and he was going to be rebluing it for him, and Laurie ended up returning it to him after Mike's disappearance. But it was at the Shaver residence when Mike went missing. There was also another .38 that she sold to Joe Bray, which means that Laurie had access to 4 .38 caliber handguns at the time that her husband, who was found buried in her backyard and was shot and killed by a .38 caliber handgun, she had 4 of them at that time. So yeah, they're not going to tell the prosecution that they can't talk about guns. They also wanted to exclude the opinions of handwriting being forged. Now, this pertains to the postcard that Laurie received right after Mike's remains were found, and also a handwritten card to a Deborah Townsend, not Vanessa, that says, "Roses are red, violets are blue, my wife's cheating on me, your husband is too." And also the forged signature on the back of the check. The judge ruled that there will be no lay witness opinion given on the handwriting, which is standard, but the evidence is allowed in. In March of 2021, Laurie and her attorney, Jeffrey Weggs, make a video that she puts on YouTube in order to raise money for her defense. In the video, her attorney claims that Laurie was dropping kids off at the school when Jay saw the bruises on her from Mike's alleged abuse. Her attorney explains that Jay told Laurie that he could protect her, and his military training could help him make a man disappear. He goes on to say that Jay told Laurie that she needed to make a sitting patio in the backyard, and told her how much concrete she would need, and even assisted her in purchasing the concrete. Which is interesting. The first fire pit post was made in March. not long before she and Jay broke things off, but that was 4 months after Mike had gone missing. So it doesn't seem to make much sense. He goes on to say that Travis came along later and put more concrete out there with her. And basically, Laurie was just innocent and didn't know anything about anything. They asked for donations for her defense, and then Laurie is given the opportunity to speak, saying that she doesn't know why she's being targeted. The video closes with Mr. Weggs explaining attorney's fees and again asking for people to reach into their pockets and to help Laurie get out of this mess. There was something that stood out to me in the transcripts of an interview with the investigator in this case. She said that everyone she interviewed, she would ask, "Do you know of anyone that would want to harm Mike?" And that's where it would come up what a great guy Mike was. His family and his friends speak of him warmly. They tell funny stories and share in their grief and hope for justice. On June 30th, 2018, Mike's friend and neighbor hosted a candlelight memorial at her home to honor and remember Mike. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, and team members gathered in remembrance, mourning their loss and celebrating the man that he was. His family has vowed to somehow make sure that his kids know how much Mike loved and adored them, despite what they may have been told by the woman who took him away from them. It has taken 8 years, 10 months, and 2 days from the time that Mike Shaver was last seen alive until the time that his accused murderer is finally set to stand trial. It's taken a long time, but we are all one step closer to justice for Michael Shaver.